Well, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Well, good morning. I'm Bill Johnson. I have been the chair of this committee in the past, so I guess I'll open the meeting this morning with a call to order. And the first agenda item is public comment. We have some new people that people haven't seen very often, so is there any public comment? Welcome. All right. The next one, action items. First action item is committee officers. Mr. Miller.
The PSTA has now had its committees in place for 2 years, and the terms of chairmanships as established by our rules and regulations is 2 years. So we have on the agenda to discuss appointing a new chair. The nominating committee of PSTA met last week and is recommending that Chair Johnson be reappointed to the Finance Committee along with County Commissioner Eggers and Largo Commissioner Chris Holmes as an alternate. Mark Dighton is just unable to come this morning. He's also recommended to be reappointed, but so that's the full slate of the committee, at least if the PSTA board approves that for your consideration. But is there any volunteers who would like to chair the committee?
I'll volunteer.
Oh, to be vice chair.
So I'll take that as a motion and a second for Joe to be chair. And at the same time, a motion for you to be vice chair.
There you go.
And a second going the other way.
Yes.
Is there any comment on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. The next item of business is the meeting minutes. Or, no, the next item of business would be to transfer the chair over to a new elected chair.
Exactly.
There you go.
You got it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so as Bill just said, the next item on the agenda is the November meeting minutes. Any comments or corrections?
None here. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Okay, next item is real-time data management software upgrade. Mr. Lentz?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to come in and present this action item to you. What I'm here today is to recommend approval of an upgrade to CleverWorks, the data management software package, at a total cost not to exceed $293,000. A little background, as you have in the action item. Currently, PSTA's real-time bus information is all based on data management software. And what we have right now is what's called Bus Tools. Bus Tools is coming to the end of its useful life, not so much the support life, but at the end of its useful life. And it's a very labor-intensive software, and now just as I go on, I'll just give you a few examples. But what we've seen from this CleverWorks package, which Clever Devices has finally developed and pushed out, there's actually a couple of customers that have it now, and we're one of the ones looking to procure it, is it offers 3 basic major components, which has us pretty excited. Number one, we do expect a cost savings on this. Currently, since we've had the real-time project up and running, we've really had to work with Clever Devices to do a lot of validation and a lot of quality assurance checking, which comes at an additional expense. In fact, after I'm done, Ms. Woodward, our IT director, is going to be talking to you about an upcoming support agreement, which we are optimistic we can eventually bring that down in cost with the CleverWorks package. So there is a good cost savings with this. There's also a very good labor savings on this, and I'll give you an example about what this software can do other than what our current software, bus tools, can accomplish. When we do something as simple as replacing or adding a bus stop, similar to what we're doing with the overpass on US 19, it takes up to hours, days, and possibly weeks to go out and collect data, send it to Clever Devices for QA testing, get it back to us, finally validate it, and push it out. Simple as something as a bus stop. And I have Charlie Thomas here, who's a real-time analyst who actually really works with the software, and he'll verify what I'm saying, how labor-intensive this is. Not only that, but it currently requires 2 staff persons to take a data van out, one to drive and one to do the collection. This software will now allow us to do this right at the desktop through what they call data tracing. In other words, it uses basic Google mapping. It allows you to make these adjustments without going out, without spending staff time to collect the data, actually collect it on the desktop, implement it, push out the adjustments through our wireless LAN or even a cellular network, and bingo, the bus stop is real-time information. It happens that quickly. And that goes along to the labor savings, and that's just one of many different types of savings this adds. Another thing that we're really excited about is the ability to respond to changes. Currently, with our bus tool software, if we go out and make a route variation, something as simple as a long-term detour, or we make a change midstream, we have to go out with the van again, 2 staff persons, recollect the data, send it back up to Clever Devices to have them do a QA and validation. Then we have to wait until our next run pick comes up as we get all this information together, and then we send it out to the bus fleet. CleverWorks will now allow us to do that on the fly. We'll be able to go out and make the change, get the data out to the bus, and actually have real-time information to long-term detours, or even, again, mid-route changes. It also allows us to do very simple things called geofencing, where we can go out and we can actually set up it's a software type of fencing in different areas, where when the bus approaches that, it can actually change how the bus reacts, both on real-time collection, on voice enunciated. Another example is when the project first came up, we used to get some complaints about early in the morning how loud the bus enunciating is in very quiet areas. With geofencing, we can actually set up a parameter through the mapping system that when the bus approaches that, it will quiet it down. As it leaves, it will go back up to its normal audible alert. So there are many, many different modules in this software. We have had many webinars with Clever Devices. We've had several meetings with their sales department. We went over this tooth and nail to make sure that they're not selling us anything, that we're not sure how it functions. And we're very excited to move forward with this software. It is funded under a grant, so I am asking that you move this on for board approval, because we think it's going to really make a difference. And I believe you know that the real-time bus information is probably the greatest amenity we've ever brought out to our passengers. This time, we can make adjustments on the fly, which is what we wanted to do from the very beginning, so we're very excited to get this software. Any questions?
When you talk about the fencing, electronic fencing, in other words, that's just a perimeter around the bus area that allows for you to make changes. It's kind of like a small internal location that allows you to make changes inside that.
Yes, and that reaches out to anywhere we have the real-time information, so we can make that change anywhere we can pronounce County. We have some interesting use for it on site in the garage. It can give us a little bit more from statistical information, pull in and pull out information on the buses. However, we can set up different geofencing, like I said, throughout the county. There's many examples. Another example would be if you want a specific onboard announcement in a certain area, this geofencing will allow that. So if it comes up to an area that we've configured a geofencing, it'll say, hey, instead of plan A on the onboard bus announcement, it'll talk about plan B. As it leaves, it goes back to status quo. Geofencing also allows another product, which we really haven't looked at in depth, but it's all part of that. I don't know if you heard about audible alerts for buses making left and right turns. Geofencing is the foundation for that to function if we ever moved on to that area, which we're not looking at right now, but it's something we may do in the future. So geofencing really adds a lot to that. But I really think from my perspective, the greatest savings with this CleverWorks is how we're going to reduce the cost going forward. And we're really going to manage, this will be the first time we at PSTA, and this is pretty exciting, will actually be able to manage all of our data from start to finish in-house. And that's what we've never been able to currently do with the current bus tool software. So that's one of the things that really excites us. We're going to take this product over and we're going to manage it totally in-house. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Couple quick questions. Is this a one-time purchase? Is this over a period of time? Is there an ongoing support agreement that comes along with it, or how does that work?
Yes, this is a one-time purchase with a 1-year warranty support, and then after that, we'll have to move forward with additional support agreements. Again, following me, Deborah Woodward's going to talk about the current support agreement because we finally have expired our 2 years since we've had system acceptance. I don't want the committee here to think that going forward we're going to be coming back to you with 2 totally different support agreements. This will eventually all become one support agreement. So this software, I did reach out to Clever Devices. It's pretty robust, pretty complex. It's almost a 12-month lead time from notice to proceed to handing off. So following me, again, when Deborah asked me for a support agreement, that will cover most of how long it will take us to get this up and running.
So we're looking at like this time next year before it's...
Fully implemented, we have it, we understand it, and it's going to be handed off to us. You know, we've had a great relationship with Clever Devices, and I just want to bring up a point because I know there's a lot of talk about when you get softwares, the company standing behind you. We have a great relationship with Clever Devices. We've developed that over many years. We are what they call a showcase transit property. Their vested interest is to make sure whatever they give us works perfectly, and over time, that has been the case. We've never had any issues with them on any type of software development. So my confidence level of having this thing work is really high.
So the bus tools, is the existing software package that we use, is that the scheduling system? Is it the support? I'm not sure what the scope of the project is.
It is the data management. Everything, Bill, everything on real-time is built on bus tools. So when we first...
We've had bus tools for a long time?
Yes, we've had it from the implementation of the product. So when you want to go out and you want to create a route, you want to bring on route A, you have to go out and you have to do a lot of data collection. You have to identify the bus stops, you have to do route variations, and that's what this database software does. Then when you get that on, it's like the brains of the whole real-time project. So once you have that on board, your route now becomes real-time, so to speak.
So when you go out with a GPS identifier that captures the stop locations and the elements of it,
Yes.
rather than based on a graphical mapping of the county.
That's correct. And Charlie, do you want to make a real quick comment on it?
Yeah, the van itself is equipped with a GPS tracking device that when I go out and I stop at that individual stop, it'll tell me exactly where I'm at, and then I bring that back and import it back into bus tools, and that's how we design the route from there.
That's each and every stop and each and every route variation. Even if we make a change, another example, and Charlie can also comment on this, we have routes obviously that they go from point A to P, point A to C, and occasionally they'll take a variance to a B, for instance. So it goes from A to C, but it deviates on B. When we make a change to that deviation, you actually have to go back from A, collect the data again, to B, into C, just for a small variation. This software will allow Charlie to do that at his desktop.
Just drill in.
Is there anything that this software is not going to do that bus tools does better? The reason I ask that is that I understand the concept of taking 2 softwares and kind of merging that into one, and I, we struggle with that oftentimes with in my own organization between trying to get this software to talk to another software. But sometimes what I find though too is that sometimes maybe you have a GPS or an AVL system that is really, really good at AVL, but maybe not so good at something over here. And while you wish they could talk to each other, that when you get one company that tries to do everything, they don't do all of it well. So Is there anything that you think might be falling through the cracks here that maybe Bus Tools does better?
No, actually, I would ask Brian, you think more of Bus Tools to CleverWorks is an upgrade. It'd be like going from Microsoft Word to Microsoft Office. So it will take the current database, incorporate it, which is a nice plus. They've made this backward compatible so we don't have to go back out, thank God, and recollect all the data. It will actually allow us to export the Bus Tool data into CleverWorks, and then now from this point on, CleverWorks takes all that and manages it. So we will phase out the Bus Tools product. So everything in Bus Tools now will carry over to CleverWorks.
All right, thanks.
One last question. Are we doing this as like an early on transportation network, or are there other transportation operations around the country that have already tried this? In other words, are we a guinea pig, or are we doing something that's already up and running?
We are doing something that's up and running, and it's funny you asked that question because I've been reaching out for it for a couple of days. Currently, it is a new product, but currently there's 2 customers that have it fully deployed. And not counting us, there are 3 customers that have procured it and are now on the configuration side of the software, 2 transit properties. And we're getting pretty good responses back.
Good. Good question.
Well, no, I was just going to make a comment.
Yeah.
Obviously, the sticker price is high. This is, now that we're looking very close at our capital program and looking for every possible dollar to put into buses, it's a challenge to bring before an upgrade to software of $293,000, and then your next action item is another $200K plus $260 for just the annual agreement. But this real-time thing is now the backbone of the entire organization. I mean, the paper schedule is now being phased out, and that is no longer the way people are accessing the system. This system is fundamental to running PSTA. We've invested heavily in this. I joke that Walt can't miss a meeting to come in the latest upgrade from Clever Devices. I mean, it's a marriage, as he said. It's a very positive marriage, but it is incredibly expensive. It's not like Clever is giving us any deals. But this is a really good upgrade. Like you said, it will save staff time. It cuts the umbilical cord more with Clever on the ongoing sort of management of the database. We've been spending $77,000 a year to ask them to review our database.
Actually, $26,000.
$26,000 a year, so it'll save that money. But that's why I'm recommending it.
Yeah. And the real time has always been my baby, so I just want to maintain it.
Is there any downside at all?
I don't want to sound like it's a perfect world. The only downside I can see is it's a very complex software. We did ask them how long, I probably just said this, from notice to receive the handoff of 12 months. We do expect some hiccups while we're implementing this, but then that's why I wanted to make it clear that I have great confidence in Clever Devices. I cannot see at this point a downside other than the fact it's going to take some time.
Let me just add to that also, Brian. We've been in this program with them for 2 years. Not any time within that 2 years have we had them not respond to
Yes,
us.
very responsive to us.
So I see the continuing support even with this new module.
And again, and I really need to emphasize this quite a bit because we're going to be back again asking for something probably in the future. Clever Devices, we are a showcase, and they bring properties down here all across the country. In fact, I would say international. I'm not exaggerating. We have companies over from Israel and different places from Europe coming to see our product. So they have a vested interest to make sure we're happy. And even as Mr. Miller said, this is expensive. We actually went in and got to negotiate down some of the management costs on this to bring it down a little bit for us. So we always go back. It's like a car salesman. Every time I go back and I ask them for a price, I say, give me your best price. And they give me your best price. And then I say, is that the best you can do? And they say, yes. Then I come back and I try to get them down a little bit. And I always emphasize that showcase. So we do get the best bang for the buck. I do call other properties just out of curiosity in the past and find out what they paid for software. And I kind of smile ear to ear because we're usually between 20 and 25% less. And that's because of the relationship we have with them. So I know some people get very nervous about software, but this relationship we have with them, this will work and we will make it work. Guaranteed.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a recommendation to approve go forward with it.
Okay, do we need to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay, do I have your recommendation?
I move to recommend to the board the approval of the proposed bumper package.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. My name's Deborah Woodward. I'm the IT director at PSTA. Good morning, committee members. I come to you this morning to ask for a recommendation to approve sort of what Walt was talking about and then Brad also talking about. The approval of a one-year annual support agreement for maintenance on our real-time bus information software, which includes all the things that was mentioned by Walt. We have exceeded our 2-year full warranty with him, which was part of what we negotiated with him when we developed the contract. So going into our 3rd year of using the software, we will have to pay an annual cost, and we will have to pay that going forward as well. It is the software support, but it's also the database support. As Walt mentioned, once the newer software is in place, that cost will not exist anymore. It'll wrap into all the support that we get from them. And it also includes the on-site engineering support. If for some reason going forward we need to make some major changes, we have the ability of getting a software engineer in-house to assist us with developing that, testing it, and doing some training on it. So if there's any questions, I'm open to questions.
We knew, of course, that this day was coming, that our warranty would end, and we'd start having to pay the annual agreement. So this is actually a little bit less than what we included in our budget last fall when we adopted it, this final price. But one idea that we've talked about is trying to see if we could maybe lock in longer than 1-year agreements
Yes.
in the future.
And where's that going?
This all comes out
Well,
of
we
the
got-
operating budget, and I do budget for it every year.
So would this include going forward when the next phase is fully implemented? That
Clever
we're
work.
talking about, this would cover that too?
Yes, it will cover part of it. Realize that the initial module will have a cost as well, so I may be coming to you, depending on if we can negotiate a longer term contract with them, a little slightly cost of, I'm not even sure what that should cost yet, but I'll have to have that developed in order to put that into my budget for next year.
So this, what we're talking about here now is for 2015 or?
Yes, it is, just for the 1 year.
So for calendar year 2015?
Right, right. So next year at this time, I'll probably be coming back to you again with a request, and hopefully we can extend that to possibly 3 or 5 year contract with them.
And just out of curiosity, what was the annual maintenance agreement for the bus tool software?
We didn't have a cost with it.
It
It
was
all
kind of
went
a
in
full price.
to the original agreement that we had with them.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually the first year that we have cost associated with the real-time bus information.
Yeah, we've been 2 years since system acceptance, so that's where we're at now.
Any other questions?
What is the actual number again?
It is, I am asking for recommendation for board approval for the cost of $260,901. And this is an annual cost.
So 261 roughly.
Right.
Okay.
We have, what, roughly 200 buses? So a little more than $1,200 a bus or something like that.
Well, you also have to look at the
Roughly,
fact, Mr. Scott, that this is supporting not only our riders, but ask our dispatch, ask our customer service reps. They can get on the maps right away and pull up so much information on who's driving that bus, if it's late, any other problems with the bus. So it is used by more than just our riders.
I'm sure. I
Yeah. And this was already built into our
Yes, I
budget?
did have it in our regular rate.
Okay.
Probably actually more of a, I'm just thinking about that, factor of like number of time points in the database that it keeps track of. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how they figure out the
Bus
price.
stops, all that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
But
All right, do I hear a motion to approve the annual real-time software support agreement?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay. James Bradford, how are you? Happy New Year.
You too, Happy New Year.
we've got good news.
Good.
I think.
You like good news?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Good morning, Finance Committee members. James Bradford, COO. So I want to give you an update on our SEIU labor agreement. And the SEIU is one of our 2 unions. It's the Service Employees International Union. It covers our supervisory group of 29 supervisors, 23 of which are serve in the Transportation Department, and the other 6 in maintenance. The supervisors in transportation are split up over radio communications center, scheduling, dispatch, and also the road. So we've our contract is come up for expiration this past September, and I'm pleased to announce that we entered negotiations also in September. And over the course of about maybe several meetings, we've reached a tentative agreement with the SEIU and their representatives. Currently, that is pending a final vote or ratification by all the members, and that will take place on Saturday, January 26th. And actually, if you're following along with me on page 11, just an update to your notes. The third bullet under background, it does say 17, but we are waiting for them. They had to postpone that a little bit, and we are confident that that will be successful. So this was by all means, this was a very good negotiation session for us. To be able to do it in roughly 3 meetings is pretty good as far as union negotiations go. At the heart of this, in exchange for a pay rate restructure, which usually it boils down to benefits and pay rates, PSTA was able to get a change and a restructure in the supervisor duties to include more authority over our frontline employees, our bus operators, our mechanics, and increased responsibilities to better attend to PSTA's daily operational needs. So I want to just kind of take you through some of our proposed changes. I would like to mention our pay rate restructure, which I will go into more on page 13. We have a chart. We estimate that in the first year of implementation of our new pay rate restructure with the supervisors, it will be roughly $25,000, which is currently accommodated within our current FY15 adopted budget. Just to highlight some of the contract proposals for you, and as it benefits both PSTA and SEIU, if you'd like to follow along with me on the chart on page 12, I will go through a few of these very briefly, and if you have any additional questions, I have Jeff and Henry on standby to break down these a little bit more. So we roughly, we had less than about 25 combined proposals. Some of the main ones I have here on the chart. So for example, new language regarding maintenance supervisor breaks, benefit to PSTA, to make sure that we have coverage on the shop floor at all times, that there are no unmanned telephones or radio calls in case transportation dispatch calls down there in need of some maintenance help. Number 2, new language regarding expected duties and tasks for the Flex Connector dispatch and phone coverage by supervisors. So the Flex Connector service is covered currently right now with 2 or 3 bodies which man the telephones and the dispatch. On a rare occasion when there is no coverage due to sick or vacation, this language just clarifies that the supervisors will be expected to step up and be in charge of the Flex Connector and take over those responsibilities. New language regarding supervisor authority for off hours and customer service department. As we may have mentioned to you prior, we moved the customer service department of 20 plus employees over to the operations center and moved them closer to the heart of operations. They are closer to dispatch. So this is kind of new for all of us as they sat previously over in the marketing and planning area. This new language just ensures that the supervisors realize that Monday through Friday, off hours after 5 o'clock and on the weekends, they are in charge of customer service. Should any problems arise, they need to kind of come in there and make a decision on what needs to happen next. Clarified language for supervisor requirements for sick call-outs helps Henry and his management crew just be able to establish their needs for the day. So we just made it a little bit more stringent requirements for properly calling out, so we're all notified. A benefit to SEIU, more flexibility of the uniform allowance, not to exceed $240 per year. This covers things like all of their equipment needs, their jackets, their shirts, their pants, and whatnot. Training for new procedures, technologies is now mandatory. Changes in supervisor training compensation language. So for example, our veteran supervisors, they train the newbies, the rookies, the interim supervisors at a cost of $1 an hour. So we just had some changes to languages there. Number 8 there, changes in addition to group offenses. Not an issue that we have. Now the group offenses is found in the back of our contract books. Both of these are currently what our contract books look like now. The light blue cover the operators and mechanics. The dark blue covers the supervisory group. In the back there's a list of offenses that lead to progressive discipline. It's not an issue that we really have with our supervisors. They're already expected to have authority. They're chosen to be in the roles because they're more responsible. But we did have some changes just so that we had recourse for certain issues, for example, not showing up to a mandatory meeting or such. So that was agreed upon, which was big for us. Language clarifying extra board supervisor duties, lengthened timelines for supervisor vacation requests, holiday bid provisional language we changed. All of these kind of help Henry and his department establish what their needs are going to be during the week, and just clarifies timelines for notification. New requirements for mandatory meetings and appropriate work attire. Again, we have meetings we've seen in the past year or two. We've called meetings. We haven't had 100% attendance. So we just made it clear that there are X amount of meetings a year where we expect everybody to be in attendance. Will be recourse for not showing up or making sure that you follow up on what's expected of you. To round out, we added a safety and health section. Didn't previously have that in there. Supervisors certainly get behind the wheel of vehicles. They're in charge of being safe on the road. It tells them what the company will supply them in terms of safety equipment, but also tells them what we expect of them to be safe on the road and what should happen should they find themselves in an incident or an accident or a preventable accident. So that was language that we added in there. The number 14 was interesting. We've now implemented, and the union agreed, to hold a once a year performance appraisal of all of their duties over the year, which they'll get together with their respective manager, and this will be tied to what merit pay increase they may get, anywhere from 0 up to I believe $750 we had budgeted for this year. So instead of breaking out per quarter, we will get together and decide that at once. The number 15 actually is good for us in the industry, in our transit industry. Absenteeism and attendance is very crucial. Leads to more overtime, it leads to challenges in covering routes and no-shows, especially on the shop floor when you expect a full crew. The union has agreed to reduce the occurrences, which leads to progressive discipline, by 3. So meaning where it may have been 12 occurrences in a year was a severe penalty, now it'll be 9. I believe in this case, what was it, Jeff or Henry, it's 7 now. So 7 occurrences inside of 12 months will lead to a more harsher recourse for us in terms of trying to figure out the person's attendance rate. So that's very helpful. And it also sets the tone for this bid contract, which is coming up due this summer, which we anticipate entering into negotiations. So those are some of the highlights. At the very bottom there, you'll see compensation, more steps in early years, and a top rate of 18 rather than 20. So let me explain to you just what that means if you want to follow along with me on page 13. The new step plan. So all of our supervisors are former bus operators, they're former mechanics who have shown exemplary work, diligence, attention to detail, and they've had the aspiration to move higher. So all of them at some point in time have moved up. How we decide how to pay them according to the operators and current mechanics is it's based on a % of the top operator and or top master mechanic rate. So currently, if you look at the far left 3 columns, the current rate, if I'm a new supervisor from 0 to 5 years in the position, I get 105% of the top operator rate. 6 to 9, 108, it goes all the way up to 20 years. If I reach 20 years in the position, not necessarily as an employee, but 20 years in the position, I'm eligible for 120% of the top operator or top master mechanic rate. So we restructured that a bit, and we made it possible to reach the very top 120% after 18 years. And there's some movement now in the earlier years for the younger staff. So if I'm in the position for 5 years, instead of waiting 5 years before I got that 3% jump, the first 12 months I'm at 105. If you look at the last 2 columns, the second 12 months I have a chance to increase. And then after 3 years, I have a chance to go to 108 as opposed to waiting 6 years. So those are pretty much changes I think we're very happy with. Both sides were happy, specifically with the movement of the 0 to 5 people, which make up 40% of the supervisory employees. And that will also help them hopefully ratify our tentative agreement. Once again, I would like to mention the projected impact of this to us now to implement, we believe, is roughly $25,000 or less, and it is accounted for in a cushion our FY15 budget. So at this time, I'm going to just conclude and open up to any questions you all may have about the contract or the proposals.
Questions?
Thank you, James. Just a quick question. Does the contract require the supervisors to come from existing employees, or can you go outside the organization too?
Right now, it's been our past practice to just look internally.
Well, it doesn't require it.
No,
There's no requirements to it either way. No.
Right, but that's been kind of
But it's been our practice to
right.
hire from within.
And the reason we do that, for example, with the transportation supervisors, is we actually came up with our own little procedures on how we do that. So the union had concerns about a new operator, for example, becoming a supervisor, right away. So I think we came up with an agreement that they would be a bus operator for at least 18 months. It gives them an idea of what our bus operators in Pinellas County go through, all the little intricacies of the service routes, so on and so forth. Before they get behind the desk, they can kind of live a day in the life of the shoes of an operator or mechanic before they become a
Interim
supervisor.
program too. The interim
Yeah, oh
program.
yes, thank you. We have an interim program, as Jeff mentioned, which is a kind of a training academy, if you will, for folks who are interested in becoming a supervisor. The duties are quite detailed. As I mentioned, there's 4 functions of the transportation that you're supposed to learn. A lot of it, as Walton and Deb mentioned, the functions of a lot of our software
Some of our
programs.
devices, tasks.
Yeah, so it does kind of help ease people into it a little bit.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay.
Just to sort of summarize, basically for $25,000 in the STEP program, we get a general, what I would describe as an appropriate level of tightening of some of the provisions in the contract on page 12. Probably the biggest issue is giving the supervisors more responsibility and making them more accountable for running the operation, which is what they do. And by having the merit-based performance evaluations, which is first time ever at PSTA, where basically a manager's subjective evaluation leads to compensation for union employees, is a pretty big thing. And they actually, the supervisors themselves asked for additional responsibility. And so they're going to get it. Going with a step plan, I know that has maybe not been maybe the most favorable way to compensate employees, or at least that's been discussed at the PSTA board in the past, but this is a relatively low-cost way amongst our supervisors to give them more responsibility. So that's why I recommend it.
Brad, on the merit side, how does that work? Is that like if they, let's say, don't get a top review, does the step become less, or how does that?
Well, it's a standalone bonus
Okay, so it's
program.
bonus type. Okay.
Yeah, and we budgeted $750 this year per employee.
Okay.
So instead of now, it's a mathematical formula based on attendance.
Yeah.
Now it's a subjective
Right.
form, sheet that the manager fills out.
The way we structure this sheet, anything below a meets expectations would result in $0. So if your needs improvement or unacceptable performance, you're at $0. Needs improvement, you get 6 months to try to make some improvement and then maybe reach a portion of that. And then you have exceeds expectations and then superior performance in order to hit the 750 mark.
It sounds to me like you guys have done a good job negotiating. So I would move approval.
Second.
Second, okay, I think it sounds like it's doing a good job of trying to really tighten up some of the key issues and in the long run be beneficial not only for the employees but also for the PSTA in terms of keeping a good handle on supervisory functions.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, so a motion, we already did have a motion, right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, good job. Okay.
Thank you.
Ah, I didn't see it. Ms. Borchers, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
This agreement that you have in front of you is the Intergovernmental Coordination and Review and Public Transportation Coordination Joint Participation Agreement. It's something that the MPO puts together every 5 years, and it makes us eligible for monies under Section 5303. We receive about $80,000 a year, and that goes to supporting our planning staff. The MPO also receives a portion of that money, and they use it for their staff and consultant work. The consultant work that they do under that section, we have influence over. So, as I mentioned, we have to have this agreement as part of being eligible for that money. It outlines all of the reasons that we need to have this agreement. It's a consolidated agreement for other purposes as well. It includes other parties such as the TBARDA, FDOT, and the RPC. It has a conflict and dispute resolution process, which I don't know if we've ever used, but it is outlined and it is a requirement. So we're asking for your approval of the ICAR, the Intergovernmental Coordination and Review, and under this joint participation agreement.
Questions?
Is this substantially the same language as was the last cycle, or has there been significant changes in either our responsibilities or our accountability?
No, there has not been any significant changes.
That was my question.
My question.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. That was quick. Thanks. Okay,
Okay.
here we go. Brad.
Mr. Chair, you are doing a great job being, we're right on time.
Right.
So far.
I'm just-
So, okay, I can bring it
I
on.
was trying to emulate my predecessor. He was always very good at that.
Okay. I'll try to, I want to stay up here. So I'm going to give this presentation to all the committees of PSTA, the Finance Committee, the Planning Committee at 10:30, probably a shortened version of it at the PSTA board meeting next week, and then to the Legislative Committee when it meets the following week, so that theoretically all of PSTA board members can get this sort of more detailed information about the financial forecasts as we now project them for PSTA prior to a number of decisions that are going to have to be made and over the springtime. We have a now scheduled workshop on February 18th so there will not be a Finance Committee meeting that day in February. Instead, you should go to the epicenter there at St. Pete College on Ulmerton Road, and we are going to have a facilitated board workshop of the full PSTA board. I think that will be an opportunity for dialogue, really one of the best opportunities for dialogue that we've had in a while of the board members, including 4 new board members that weren't here last year. But in addition, we're trying to schedule the decisions that I'm going to outline in this presentation over the springtime between the workshop, the committee meetings that we have, the board meetings, so that we ultimately make some decisions probably by June in time for us to present the draft FY16 budget on schedule. At the last MPO meeting, County Commissioner Karen Seal requested, and now they've sent me an official request for a joint PSTA, MPO, and then they sent a follow-up request that the entire county commission be invited to the OCC. Can we name anybody else that wants to come to the LMNOP meeting? A sort of a joint meeting with the of all the different folks that are involved in transportation, I think is what her desire is, so that I think the idea is to get more input beyond just the PSTA board. So I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be. I'm sure it'll take some time to get that scheduled, but I think there is a desire by the county commissioners to have the input as well on the path forward for PSTA following the non-passage of green light in November. Then, as I'm going to outline here, since our challenge is really a capital challenge and a capital funding challenge, we have the state legislative session coming up, and federal authorization or reauthorization of the transportation bill could become very important opportunities for PSTA. They have been in the past, and we don't want to lose the opportunities we have to communicate with them on these issues that we have about our financial forecast. Right now, we don't have any additional workshops scheduled. We have just the one on the 18th of February, but we might have more. There might be one of the hopeful outcomes of the 18th is a discussion about whether or not we have additional workshops. I've talked to since the first of the year. I've talked to all 15 board members, and so some do think that there is a value in having regular dialogue amongst the entire board rather than just at the committees, or just having the committees, but outside having a more open discussion. So we'll have to take a look at that. There are, we've hired a facilitator that the county has used before. I think Clearwater has also, this guy, John Streetmatter, and he is scheduling, along with some other folks that he's working with, one-on-one pre-interviews with each board member. I don't know if you've been called yet. Okay, I don't really have an update on exactly where they're at with that, but I'll find out. And in discussing with him, the goal of the 18th really is to identify all the possible options or ideas that the board members have, not to make necessarily any final decisions. It won't be an action item meeting anyway, but to look at all the different options that board members have. I mean, post green light, there are, unlike the focus of green light, now there are many focuses across the PSTA board, whether to go on the ballot in 2016 again or some future date, whether to do nothing, just contract the service substantially, and all options in between. We're not necessarily going to talk about those today, though. What my objective is to get you some information about where we now forecast the finances of PSTA out into the future, to refresh our memories on what the PSTA board has adopted, the no new revenue scenario for how we design our system, and just to outline decisions coming down the road as I see them that the board is going to have to make. So PSTA has adopted a specific plan for what we would do if green light did not pass, called the no new revenue scenario. That was developed about 2 years ago, in 2013, as part of our community bus planning effort at the time. The idea behind the no new revenue scenario was to concentrate our resources onto the highest ridership routes, onto the highest capacity corridors, and eliminate or streamline other routes that are less productive. The idea is to get rid of some of those loops that Walt was talking about with the real-time and sort of deviations off into the neighborhoods and have the routes run more directly on the main corridors so that people that are riding it can get to their destinations faster. Doesn't necessarily help folks that are back in those neighborhoods that get that limited service, but overall, ridership will increase if it's more reliable and direct. And the concept that the consultant came up with that the PSTA board adopted was that by focusing on these higher ridership routes, that will obviously generate more fare box revenue. And while the fare box does not pay the full cost of operating the service, it is our number one most substantial revenue source that we can control. And so obviously getting more fare revenue allows us to put more resources into the service. But the point I want to make in this presentation today is going to this no new revenue scenario. While it is a more efficient, streamlined system that we've adopted and that we are going to implement, it is a cut. It is a reduction in the amount of service and transit service in Pinellas County by an order of magnitude of approximately 25% from what we have today. These are the maps. On the right-hand side of the screen is our current system. And on the left-hand side is the no new revenue scenario. And as you can see, the red lines on the no new revenue scenario are our core routes that would have the highest frequency service. And there are more of them than in the current system. However, the coverage of routes on the current system is substantially more than the no new revenue scenario. Basically, we would eliminate or reduce service to substantial parts of the county in order to divert those funds to support the highest ridership corridors. But even those high ridership corridors are reduced. All services at PSTA under the no new revenue scenario are reduced from what they are today. And that's what this table tries to explain. Central Avenue and 49th Street in St. Petersburg are two of the red high-capacity core routes under the no new revenue scenario. But even those routes are less than what we have out there today. The Central Avenue trolley runs 15 minutes in the peak hours and then 30 minutes in the off-peak hours. And under the no new revenue scenario, it keeps that 15 minutes because we concentrate resources on that route, but it goes to 60 minutes in the off-peak. And all services, including the Central Avenue trolley, are reduced in span. So that rather than going to 11:30 at night, which they do now, it would be cut back to 10 o'clock at night, which is a substantial reduction. Same thing on one of our highest ridership routes, the 49th Street, Route 52. It keeps its frequency. It's a core route. This is one of our priorities, but the span is reduced. Some of the lower ridership routes in St. Petersburg on 22nd Avenue North and 30th Avenue North, the north part of St. Pete, east-west across the county, are totally eliminated. They're running every hour now, but there would be basically no service in North St. Pete at all. Mid-County, again, Park Boulevard is one of our high ridership routes, and it's a red core route under the no new revenue scenario, but it's reduced by span of service. There would be no service anymore in Seminole to St. Pete College because that Route 58, which also serves Bryant Dairy Road, would be eliminated entirely. Anyway, so the list goes on. These are just some examples. All the services are reduced. The no new revenue scenario network is better. Is more efficient given the estimated amount of funds we have, but it is not necessarily better. Or more beneficial to the riders. So we are looking diligently in every possible corner of PSTA ways in which we might save money in other areas so that we can put more, as most money as possible into the service. But that is proven to be very challenging and I'm sure it will be challenging. The one thing that, and I think this committee knows probably better than the rest of the board members, is that PSTA is a very low-cost operation already, and has been for a very long time. There have been, as you know, multiple studies at merging PSTA and HART over the last several years. And each of those were looking for administrative savings by merging PSTA with HART, how we might save money by consolidating. And as you know, both studies concluded that there wouldn't be much savings. There might be some savings, but it would be relatively minimal, and that's because both PSTA and HART are, according to KPMG, lean organizations with very little admin overhead to start with anyway. That happened in the previous merging study by Brian McCollum in 2013. KPMG found the same thing in more detail in 2014. And then our benchmarking process shows, as the chart here on the right shows, we are the lowest cost operation amongst our peers in the country. We lead the benchmarking. We've led it every single year in lowest cost. In fact, when you look at the 150-page latest report that the benchmarking folks put out, as far as how we compare to the other systems, the only area that we are a leader in is cost. We are the Dollar General of public transportation. We are cheap, low cost, but we are not leading in ridership or accidents or anything else like that. But regardless, we are still looking to find cost savings.
That cost is cost per vehicle mile.
Yes. And I have the other ones too, an hour on, and then broken down by maintenance, operations. We're still going to look for ways that we can save money in any possible way. We've had a great staff developed effort already of brainstorming a lot of great ideas on ways we might save money at PSTA that are outside of the service. But right now we're only counting on possibly saving $75,000 to $100,000 a year in these forecasts coming from administrative savings. The good news is that there have been some substantial changes in our forecast assumptions that benefit PSTA on the operating side. And those committee members are familiar with this chart. Show it that the red line shows expenses and the blue line projects revenues out into the future. And this chart was the one I showed last August, 6 months ago. And it has actually gotten a little bit better as we stand here today. That the gap between projected expenses growing and the revenue line growing has gotten smaller. This chart is a little bit different than the last one in that it goes out 2 more years. But essentially on the operating side, the reserves that we have built up over the last several years through savings can balance our budget for 4 additional years, out to FY18. If we were just looking at the operating budget alone, we would be okay through FY18. I'm still optimistic that we have narrowed that gap enough that even with additional savings that we might identify or other options, we might be able to close that gap almost entirely and get out to even 19 or 20, hopefully.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
In this assumption, is this with the existing schedule or is this with a reduced schedule?
With the existing schedule. The reason that it's gotten better since last August, in the last 6 months, is fuel prices have plummeted, and we are now taking advantage of those. And property values, or the economy, has improved further than we projected, and so the blue line, the revenue line, has gone up a little bit.
we have any amount of money coming in from federal, state, or other areas built into this, or is this strictly talking about dollar savings?
No, we are projecting out, in that blue line is projecting out the property tax revenues, federal and state revenues, as we project them. Now, we're not projecting increases in federal support.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
So that line item is considered to be flat.
So this is with existing service, so if it went to the no new revenue scenario service, then this could potentially be out several more years.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, right. The other thing is the red line has come down because we are not implementing the new 727 airport route that was budgeted at $1 million a year in our budget. So the red line has come down by $1 million. The problem really is on the capital side. If you add in the operating budget of PSTA and the capital budget of PSTA, it becomes completely unsustainable. PSTA has operated forever under the idea that the operating budget was our responsibility, funded with the property tax, and the capital program of PSTA was entirely funded by the federal government, the federal grants that we've received. The other thing we had going for us for many years, decades, was Congressman Young. And all of the buses that you see driving on the road today were, well, at least all the blue ones, the non-hybrids, were funded by Congressman Young earmarks. And those have completely gone away. In 2005 and 6, we got earmarks for a third of our entire fleet of 200 buses in just 2 years. And that big hump there in FY18 is when those buses become 12 years old. So if we made no changes in our policies related to capital bus purchases and the operating plan, we would have a fiscal challenge in FY18, 3 years from now, close to $120 million is what we need. So the deficit would be maybe $50 million, completely unsustainable. That's why some decisions, I think, need to be made by the PSTA board to change direction now. But I threw this chart in here from 2013 just to point out that this is not a new story that we didn't project. Back in 2013, when we adopted the Green Light Plan and the no new revenue scenario, we projected having to cut the service by about 28% back then. So now focusing more intensely on the capital program, which is really where the big deficits are projected to be. Again, if we do nothing, we have a $40 million deficit in 3 years when those 2006 buses, 5 and 6 buses, come due. So I will be recommending, not today for adoption, but in the future, a number of different policies that the board can consider. Number one is to go away, well, we've already gone away from the idea of earmarks or these lumpy purchases of 45 buses in one given year to a smoothed out capital replacement program, a consistent replacement of our buses on a relatively even cycle. So essentially, we would buy the same number of buses every single year, smoothing out the capital replacement costs over time. That obviously increases costs in some years, but it decreases costs in most years. We would extend the useful life of our buses from the federal level of 12 years to 15 years. Now, what we've been debating over time, and I'm still not accepting it, but Henry and I back there have been debating whether the operating cost impacts of extending the useful life of the buses. Now, I highlight that Not every bus would have to go 15 years under our plan. Just some buses would have to go 15 years. Other buses, depending on sort of the times in the past, how long they went, could be replaced earlier. Number 3 is we would contract out our express services to Tampa. Right now we operate those with a fleet of 10 MCI coaches, and member Scott has suggested this. Those buses, those MCI coaches are much more expensive than the rest of the fleet to replace, and those are coming due, I think, in 2 years, in 17. By not replacing those buses, but contracting out the service to a private provider who can provide that, who will provide the vehicles for us, it'll be probably, I'm assuming, an additional operating cost to PSTA, because the private contractor will charge us the operating cost, which may be approximately the same as what PSTA could operate it for, but then they're going to provide us or add into their rate the amortized cost for the vehicles. But that will save us substantial capital dollars for those MCIs, and theoretically, the contractor wouldn't have to charge us the full rate of the buses, because they could use those buses for other services that we would have to pay for. That is 10 buses, 10 expensive buses saves a substantial amount of money in the capital program. Number 4 is probably the most questionable one, or at least in my mind, is a major change, considering we just debated this about a year ago, but would be to discontinue purchasing of hybrid electric buses and going to standard diesel buses. Now, as we went through a lot of analysis a year ago and presented, there are savings in the hybrid buses over the life of the bus in terms of ongoing maintenance and, of course, fuel that our analysis back then showed made the decision to go hybrid or not a wash, about even. The $200,000 or a little bit less than that upcharge at the beginning, capital outlay, was saved over time. At least right now, with diesel fuel prices in half of what they were, that equation changes a little bit on the fuel. The maintenance costs are still more projected, and so our operating costs will go up. But over the life, over a long-term sustainable program of capital replacements, I don't see any other way that we can continue with the looming major replacement of a third of our fleet coming on the horizon. And number 5 is to take a complete look at our whole capital program and basically sweep savings in projects that have already been completed. We just opened the Pinellas Park Transit Center, which is our third capital project in a row where we actually came in under budget, and there are savings there. And now I'm counting on all those savings to buy some more buses. Fortunately, Walt and Debbie never have savings in their technology projects. They're just a sinking hole over there. But bricks and mortar, you can save some money. But we have, that's of course one-time funding, but that'll help ease the pain. Doing all of these things reduces and going to a smooth capital program is the most substantial way that we can move toward a more sustainable program at PSTA and maintain some of our services. It reduces the cost of $40 million down to $8 million annually.
That's capital cost.
This is in capital, yeah.
Right, can you go back one, please?
Yeah.
What is the criteria that you use? Maybe Henry can answer this, but what is the criteria you use in number 2 there for some buses being held in service for a longer period of time? Does it go by miles? Does it go by the expense history of the bus or whatever? What actually?
Well, so PSTA has a federal requirement that sort of governs the number of buses we have in our fleet, that's dictated by the feds, of having no more than 20% spares. We are allowed to have a 20% spare ratio, or 20% additional buses that we need to run the service every single day. Obviously, you need that because buses need to be serviced.
Right.
And so if you, based on our service level, maintain that 20% spare ratio, that in any given year, buses will come due for replacement under the 15-year horizon. But at least in the next 12 years, 10 or 12 years, there are buses that we don't need to say have every bus go to 15 years in order to have enough buses under the and still meet our spare ratio. So, for example, like, and I can't remember any specific year, but if we have 10 buses in a fleet, only 5 of them have to be used next year, then I think it would be basically Henry's call whether which are the best 5 of the 10 of the litter that we should keep on going.
Okay. All right.
So this is a graph showing what I've just explained in some numbers. This is our capital replacement program out to 2035 for the next 20 years. And you can see the $40 million or $45 million hit if we just replaced on the 12-year schedule based on the lump, and then this is 12 years later, what the buses will cost to replace. If we smooth that out, and I've spent my days and nights doing this, I'm very proud of this, by a consistent number of vehicles each year, you can get it and go away from the hybrid and go to the standard vehicle. You can drop it down to about $9 million pretty consistently each year. Henry and I have been discussing that this is like a python eating a pig, right? I mean, there is no way that you don't have that lump for a while. So you have a little bit of a lump here. They go up to 12 million. But we'll try to keep it pretty consistent. The problem is that our CIP has this as far as available funding, only $1.5 million programmed each year in the federal funds for bus replacement. And that is the $8 million gap each year.
Need a bigger python.
Yeah. So bottom line, if PSTA will go forward with these changes, recommendations on the capital program, plus the operating deficits that we projected, this is where we're at today. And this is a work in progress. We are still working on ways that we can adjust services, but essentially we believe that if we go down the path of assuming that we are providing local funds to buying buses, which we've never done before, and the feds are not going to come to our rescue, we have a balanced budget through FY17, or essentially three more years, including today, before we have a substantial deficit.
We're not really balanced, but we are using reserves to cover that shortfall.
That's right. Again, we are committed, and the staff is assuming that we are going to the no new revenue scenario, the core alignment of our routes. But any additional funds that we can identify to invest in the service can be used to make that network operate better, operate longer hours of service, operate more frequently. And these are some of the ideas that we have come up with that might be considered by the PSTA board as a way to maximize the overall level of service as we move to that new network. Of course, we're not at our cap on the property tax. We could maximize the property tax by going from 0.73 to 0.75. It's about $900,000 a year. We have had some discussions, and I think I'm going to recommend this, is contracting out and substantially increasing our bus advertising. For 6 or 7 years now, PSTA has sold bus ads internally with our own staff, and primarily only on the backs of buses. Only on the backs, in a very limited way. And what I would propose is we contract out to a company, possibly the same company that Hart has over in Tampa, which we've discussed could generate substantial increases in revenue for PSTA, order of magnitude more than double what we're receiving each year from advertising by having one company sell the entire Tampa Bay market and to sell many, many more ads on the sides of buses. Number 3, and this is the most substantial revenue opportunity we have, is to go on a steady plan to increase fares. Our fares are relatively high, but this is a potential we have to look at and talk to, obviously, the riders. We started talking last night to the track committee about the price they paid versus having no bus at all come. And so obviously a balance needs to be reached there. We're looking for admin cost savings, but those are not projected to be that substantial. Another option, which I've started to have discussions with the MPO and with the county, with some folks at the county, are to tap into other federal dollars that might be available for bus replacements. There is a program that the feds offer called Surface Transportation Program funds that they allocate based on a formula to each state, and then the states allocate down to the counties or to the MPOs, that is allocated based on the priorities of MPOs, called STP, or Surface Transportation Program dollars. That's how Hart funds its bus replacements. Gets about $4 to $5 million a year in STP funds from the Hillsborough MPO recommendation. Again, they're federal dollars, but they're governed by the MPO. That's how Orlando funds their bus replacements. That's how South Florida funds their bus replacements. Almost everywhere gets transit buses are bought with STP dollars, except for Pinellas County. Forever. Well, since Ice-T back in 1982, when STP was created, Pinellas has put their STP funding each year into the big road projects of Pinellas County. US 19, Ulmerton Road, Roosevelt. All those projects have STP dollars in them. PSTA has never received STP dollars. At least there was some positive reception to the idea that the county commission and the MPO might consider allocating some funds out of this STP pot to bus replacements.
Do we know how big that pot is?
We're trying to understand that better. I think it's around $12 to $15 million a year total. But sometimes the state is allocating even more money. Sometimes it's around to $25 million. So I'm trying to have a better understanding of that. And then number 6, of course, is to advocate as best we can and maybe partner up with some other bus agencies to advocate for additional bus funds or restoration of bus funds to the federal program. When Congress eliminated earmarks, the money didn't go away. It just went to the administration. And so the Republican-controlled Congress has wised up to this, and under the last MAP 21 reauthorization, they realized that they didn't necessarily want the administration allocating the money. And what they did, and this was sort of a debate within the transit industry, is they put all the sort of discretionary money into the rail program, and they completely eliminated the bus program. There was a few years in there where there was some competitive allocation for buses. Now that's all done. There's no money, there's no discretionary money other than our formula for buses. And that's a industry-wide problem. Every bus system in America is concerned about that. And that is the number one priority by APTA, is to restore some bus money to the capital program. When Congressman Jolly came and we gave him a tour of PSTA, he said that earmarks are back. There may not be called earmarks, but there were earmarks in the water bill that Republicans passed for water infrastructure, and he thinks that might sort of just the trend is that Congress will want some control over the discretionary allocation of funds, so it might return. I think that's my last slide. Oh, last but not least, of course, what I've been talking about is the fiscal cliff or challenges that PSTA faces out into the future with the capital program that we've got. But as the mission of PSTA is to try to improve services in Pinellas County, we hope to find solutions to this deficit and then look to improve the service and to enhance the service for the Pinellas County community. But obviously, based on the November 4th outcome, we have to look at this as an incremental approach. So that's what we also hope to focus on February 18th and beyond. We have developed internally, and you'll see it at this committee level, a detailed route performance monitoring program, which is probably one of the first times we've had such a program where we evaluate the performance of all of our services. And we've actually started taking this and looking at the new routes, not the current routes because we're going away from those, the new no new revenue scenario routes and how they would perform. And ranking those routes 1 to 40 and having that as a tool that the PSTA board can use so that we are reducing services in the most efficient way possible based on a scoring system and not based necessarily only on public comment or who comes to the meeting and complains or etc. My last comment is a number of board members, legislators, and others have talked about these different projects. At the Planning Committee, they're going to hear about this I-275 express lane service. There are ideas on there about how we might be able to incrementally launch some pilot programs or one corridor and then that would be successful and then maybe others so that over time we can improve the whole network on these different types of services. I think that is sort of the approach that is emerging from a lot of people are talking about looking at incremental projects in that way. We might be able to seek funding for those as a way to move beyond the reductions and move into hopefully ways that we might be able to improve the service in the future. I think that I've got a little bit over I know, but thank you for asking some questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Comment. Brad, I think you nailed it. I agree with all your suggestions. You know, when it comes to the fare policy, I would suggest we consider, you know, tying to that to some independent economic indicators such as inflation or like how the minimum wage is done in Florida, because it just becomes a political football whenever it gets brought up. You know, but I think you did a very good job.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, we've done that in some places I've worked before where you adopt a long-term policy of this is, and it does help a little bit. I mean, when the crowd in the room fills up and says, don't increase my fare, sometimes people buckle, but it's a little bit of a help.
Right.
The projections. These projections are using assumed annual cost of living increase, wage increases, as well as, but not fare increases. Is that right? Did we straight line fares, or did we have some increase in fares as part of the
scenarios in the straight lining of fares.
assumption?
These are all of these right now are straight lining fares.
So the revenue and the expenses go up, but
Everything on this page is not
Fares.
been assumed. These are additional ideas.
We're going to talk about this more at the
Yep.
workshop. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
Okay. Let's talk about reports. Deborah?
Thank you very much. If we turn to page 33, we'll start with the month of October. We're doing a little catch-up this month, and we'll be looking at October and November, and Michael's going to hand you the November write-up as well, as I start out. On page 33, the first month of the fiscal year is October, and we had a net deficit of 2.1 million, which was 172,000 favorable to the budgeted deficit of 2.3 million. And if we take a look down the page, you can see we are under budget again in almost every category of expenses. One thing that is different as we go through this fiscal year, last year, as you may recall, when we talked about variances, oftentimes the answer would be, well, we divided it by 12 when we spread the budget. This year, the budget team spent a lot of time looking at historical timing of items, etc., and looking at when we would expect to do things. So a lot of those variances will go away that we've talked about in the past, and more true variances will show up, or that we can explain this is how it's historically hit. One thing is on the insurance. You'll see that's above budget. It's not that our insurance costs are any higher. Last year we had a robust year of recoveries, and it's very hard to determine when those exactly will come in. We did our best efforts on that. You'll see that going forward into November. But we started out the year extremely well. When we compared ourselves to the prior year, which is on page 36, we of course see revenues are up about where they were the previous year. Expenses are also up, but there's nothing alarming in any of the items. If we take a look at the handout for November, don't panic, but we have on the items for November, which are on the handout, we had a surplus anticipated of 3.7 million, but as you can see, our budget was for 5.9 million. That can be explained in one number. Their variance was a negative 2.2 million. If you take a look about halfway down the revenues, you'll see that taxes are below budget 2.6 million. The timing of that was we received the money in the beginning of December rather than in November. Again, sometimes it's hard to predict when the county will hand over the taxes. But other than that, again, we're seeing favorable variances in the expenses. And I would also like to point out, we had talked about advertising revenue is one area to look at going forward. To outsourcing, I will say, so far in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, our marketing revenue is up significantly, and I think the efforts of the marketing team have to be commended for what they're doing on an in-house basis at this time. If we take a look on the next page, you'll be able to see where we are on a year-to-date basis, the first 2 months of the year. Again, what's driving the negative variance of $2 million are simply taxes. Without that, we would be favorable to budget. Are there any questions on the first 2 months of the year?
So the assumptions on how to spread the tax revenue did not square with what
Right, we
things
looked
are
at
coming in.
historical
But-
averages and when we'd actually receive it in the past, and took some averages and put that in there.
But we still expect to get the same
Oh, no.
amount during the
In a
total year.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Well, ridership report is at your places, and for December, and December was yet another record, highest December ever. We are so far doing very well on ridership this year. December was also benefited by having one additional day compared to last year. But even still, it was up. So you have-
One of the unusual things there is that CMA, which creates the Jolly Trolley passengers,
Yeah.
had tremendous visitors during the December
Mhm.
school holiday.
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't seen that yet, but
And I don't know
Sure.
why it's different than last year, but
Do we have any study or anything like that as to what's driving higher and higher ridership? Economics?
awesome CEO leadership at
Yeah,
PSTA. No,
Bad question.
I think it's all of the real time has been a boost. The U-Pass program is generating new riders. All of them.
Okay.
where does the youth pass come in here?
Um, I don't think we have it on, we don't have it listed here. We can add that.
So it's included someplace else?
Yeah. Those riders are tracked, and then they're in the ridership totals.
So they're in the first total?
Yeah.
All right, do we anticipate similar situation, similar ridership in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're tracking it, obviously, daily. So far, January has been, I think, pretty positive. Year over year, once we hit the time when we launch the U-Pass program, then we'll see whether we stay about even or what. I mean, so.
We're coming in season, so next few months.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last report is in your packet. I don't know if we have to go through it in detail, but it is a quarterly report you receive on all the different contracts that PSTA has ranked in order of value. So our number one biggest contract with a vendor is our fuel. And number two, I think, is health insurance.
Questions on that? Okay. So, future meeting subjects?
Our audit is prepared to come in February, but we're not having a committee meeting in February because we're having a workshop, so they will be here in March. We submitted all of our information for our triennial review to the FTA, and they're coming in June for their lovely, fun day of reviewing all of our compliance on dozens of federal things, including that spare ratio number I was talking about. So Henry is going to be hiding buses over somewhere at Brian's facility or someplace. How would they go? No, we're not doing that. The February meeting there's no finance committee in February, and the March meeting is not going to be on the Wednesday. It is scheduled now for Friday. I think Rachel has pulled the committee.
Not the finance yet, because we have a couple of new members that are going to be starting.
Okay.
So it's sort of a weird transition.
So I guess the idea would be to reschedule the March Finance Committee, and the recommended time would be Friday, the same Friday, but if you cannot make it,
Which one?
The 20th.
March.
March.
February is no meeting at all. We're going to have a workshop. March, on the typical day that the committee meets, the county commission and the Tourist Development Council are meeting the joint meeting together, and we don't believe we'll have a quorum anyway. And so at least the time that I thought was maybe best would be to just shift it 2 days to Friday.
Right, is that for everybody's schedule?
Rachel will send out a poll.
Okay. All right, other business? Okay, move for adjournment.